Bom dia a todos. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank you, everyone, for your attendance. The professors at jury, as well as Samuel's family and friends. This is a PhD defense of the University of São Paulo. I'd also like to point out that this PhD defense is being streamed on YouTube. I'm really grateful to Professor Jaime Gomes Hernandez. He is a full professor at Valencia Polytechnic University. I'd like to thank you first for welcoming Samuel in Valencia and for accepting our invitation to participate in Samuel's defense. I really appreciate it, Jaime. I also would like to thank Renata Oliveira. She's a full professor at Federal Center of Technological Education of Minas Gerais. I'm so grateful for the participation of Mariana Gianotti, our colleague at the University of São Paulo. Mariana is an associate professor at the Polytechnic School. And finally, here in person, we have Professor Antônio Nelson Rodrigues da Silva. He is a full professor, a lot of full professors here. He is a full professor at the São Carlos Engineering School at University of São Paulo. As you know, you have three steps in this PhD defense. First of all, Samuel will make his presentation. The presentation is around 30 minutes. Then the second step will be the discussions and questions of the jury. And finally, we will present the jury evaluation. Vou falar um pouquinho em português só para vocês entenderem. Eu só apresentei a banca, que é topíssima, é um monte de professores titulares, tá, gente? Estou falando um pouquinho em português para a família de Samuel, tá? E expliquei que a gente tem 3 etapas. A primeira é a apresentação de Samuel, acho que ele já comentou com vocês 30 minutos. Depois a etapa mais longa, que é a etapa da arguição. E depois a gente termina com o resultado, tá bom? Okay, so Samuel, could you start, please?
Yes. First of all, sim.
Toco, a gente está com um pouco de eco aqui.
O microfone dele está aberto.
Acho que seu microfone está aberto. O seu microfone está aberto e fica com um pouco de eco quando a gente fala. É isso mesmo? Ok, obrigada.
Perfeito. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank my supervisor, Cira, the professors of the committee, my family, my friends, my friends watching on YouTube. I'm very happy. It's a great honor for me having you here today. My thesis is entitled Travel Demand Modeling in a Bus Transit Network, an approach focusing on spatially dependent data. And in the thesis, we address 3 variables: boarding, alighting, and the sum of boarding plus alighting, which we call the transit partnership. The main problem is, for a given bus line or bus network, we may have information on boarding or alighting only for a specific number of bus stops. But it's important to know this information for all the bus network because this information is used for planning purposes. So the thesis proposes applying spatial models so we can use the available data to predict the information of interest for the unsampled points. Therefore, the general objective is to perform a transit partnership modeling along bus lines based on spatial approaches, and the specific ones are to analyze the factors affecting the stop level ridership, to assess the improvements provided by predictors in the geostatistical modeling of the bus ridership, to compare spatial and local models with traditional approaches, to compare spatial approaches using Euclidean and network distances, to assess the prediction accuracy in unsampled points, and finally, to investigate the effect of the sampling method. Well, the thesis follows a collection of 4 articles, and each article addresses some of the specific objectives cited. Regarding the database, we use São Paulo as a case study. So the transit ridership data comes from 8 bus lines in São Paulo. And as we can see, the transit ridership data along these 8 bus lines follows the main axis of employment in São Paulo. But we can also see a high passenger volume coming from regions with higher population density, which is more spread around the city, and regions with low to middle income. Following, we have the general method of the thesis. 2 classes of models are proposed. The first one are the geostatistical models, starting with the ordinary kriging technique. Ordinary kriging is a univariate model that considers a local constant mean of the data, and the spatial dependence is modeled through the semivariogram function. In the universal kriging case, this constant local mean is replaced by a linear combination of predictors, and the semivariogram function is modeled, is applied to the model's residuals. 3 models of semivariograms are considered: exponential, Gaussian, and spherical. And we also applied the count data regressions, namely the Poisson regression and the negative binomial regression, which have an exponential form. But all previous models consider only one coefficient estimates for the entire database. In the case of the local models, the geographically weighted regressions, we have a different model being calibrated for each point in the database. So each point in the database has a different coefficient estimate. Because spatial models in general uses the distance between points in the database as weights, 2 types of distances are allowed: the Euclidean distance and the network distance, which is the real distance the bus line travels from one bus stop to another. And now regarding the computational tools, these are the software we used to the analysis along the thesis, with a high representation of the R software. And now talking about the first article, this article addresses the first 2 specific objectives, mainly the inclusion of predictors into the geostatistical modeling of the bus ridership. This paper has already been published in the Bulletin of Geodetic Sciences. And the variable of interest in this case is the number of boardings in the evening peak hours along one of the bus lines. And the method started with a stepwise selection of predictors. And then we run 2 models: universal kriging, a spatial model, and linear regression, a non-spatial model, using combinations of the selected predictors and varying the number of predictors in each combination. So comparing these 2 models allows assessing the contribution of incorporating spatial dependence into the modeling. But a 3rd model, the ordinary kriging model, was also applied, so we could compare with universal kriging and assess the improvement provided by including predictors in the geostatistical modeling. Now the results: 3 predictors were identified in the stepwise selection. So we have population, residential, commercials, and service area, and the distance to the nearest metro station. As you can see, the first 2 had a positive influence in the number of boardings. So the higher the population and the higher the residential, commercial, and service area, the higher the number of boardings. Conversely, we have a negative value for the metro distance, because bus stops located closer to metro distances tend to have a higher passenger volume. Now the results: we have a measure of error, and the worst results come from the ordinary kriging, because ordinary kriging is a univariate model. It does not use predictors. Following, we have the linear regression with a better prediction power, and we note that increasing the number of predictors tend to have a higher impact on the prediction accuracy in the case of linear regression. But this is not always true in the case of the universal Kriging technique. The best results of all and the best results from universal Kriging uses only one predictor, the first case population. And now the conclusions, you can see that the coefficients were consistent and best results with only one predictor in the universal Kriging case. So including predictors and including spatial dependence into the modeling of the bus ridership does improve the prediction accuracy of the modeling. And universal Kriging performed better than all the other models. And errors do not follow the same pattern in universal Kriging and linear regression. Now moving to the second article, this article addresses mainly the comparison between local and spatial models with traditional approaches. It was already published in the journal Applied Spatial Analysis and Policy. And in this case, two variables of interest are addressed. The first one is the boardings over an entire day along one of the bus lines, as we can see here, and the number of alightings in the opposite direction. And the method started with the global models, the calibration of global models, starting with the linear regression, the basic traditional model, and following the Poisson regression, which is a count data model addressing the asymmetry of the bus ridership data. And then we have local models starting with the geographically weighted regression, which addresses the spatial dependence and spatial variation of coefficients. We also apply the universal Kriging model. And finally, the geographically weighted Poisson regression, which accounts for all previous factors, all important factors. Now the results, starting with the results for boardings and the single coefficients regressions, linear regression, Poisson regression, and universal Kriging. We have population and commercial and service area having, again, a positive influence in the number of boardings. And then we have two measures of distances. These distances reflect the importance of the integration with other modes, other public modes of transport. So the higher the distance between points from the bus stops and the bus terminals, the higher the number of boardings. The same from the rail transit. And lastly, we have the income with a negative sign as expected. And now I brought in an example of the results from the local models. On the left, we have the geographically weighted regression coefficients. And on the right, we have the geographically weighted Poisson regression coefficients, all for the commercial and service area variable. And we can also see the single result from the linear regression on the left and Poisson regression on the right. We can see that they have one unique sign, a positive sign, but in the local case, you can see that some bus stops had a negative influence from the variable of commercial and service area. Now the results for alightings, they were similar to boardings, but in this case, a new predictor was included, the frequency with a negative sign. And now the results, first for boardings and then for alightings, we can see a decreasing pattern in the error, so an improvement in the goodness of fit measures, because we are increasingly incorporating the important features of the bus ridership, such as asymmetry, spatial dependence, and spatial variation of coefficients. And now, as I said, we note gradual improvements in the estimates with superior performance of spatial and local models. The local model, the geographically weighted Poisson regression and universal Kriging had the best estimates, and universal Kriging using only two predictors had the best estimates of all. And good results with a low number of predictors, as I said, only two predictors in the universal Kriging case. And now moving to the third article, local modeling as a solution to the lack of top-level ridership data. In this paper, we start to validate the models and to analyze how they respond to missing data conditions. This paper is currently under review in the Journal of Transport Geography. And now the variable of interest is the sum of boarding plus alightings, as I said earlier, the transit ridership data. And in this case, we applied a new local model, the geographically weighted negative binomial regression, which addresses all previous factors, plus the overdispersion of the transit ridership data. And from the complete data set that I showed earlier, we define 5 missing data scenarios with an increasing percentage of missing data from one scenario to another. And in this case, the complete database was split into 2 data sets, calibration data set and validation data set, which is the missing data. So basically, we try to answer 3 questions. Is it possible that the coefficients remain similar as we remove points from the database? And what about the prediction accuracy? Are the network distances more appropriate than the Euclidean distances? So, in a missing data scenario, we have an incomplete calibration data set, and using the local model, we can provide estimates for these calibration points, but also for the missing data, the validation points. On the other hand, we also have the complete calibration data set, providing coefficient estimates for all points as well. So on the left, we have suboptimal coefficient estimates for the calibration sample because they come from an incomplete data set. But on the right, we have coefficient estimates coming from the complete data set. So if you consider these coefficients as the ones closest to reality because they come from the complete data set, we can compare these 2 classes, these 2 groups of coefficients to see if they are similar using the Wilcoxon test for matched pairs. And we also compared predicted and real values of the variable of interest through a measure of error. This procedure was repeated for the validation samples and using both Euclidean and network distances, so we could compare these results as well. And now the results, starting with the factors affecting the transit ridership. In this case, new predictors appeared. The first predictor is a kind of residential area with middle to high income, so the negative sign is understandable. And the second one, we have a measure of competition between bus stops, so the negative sign was also expected. And in the third place, we have area with no predominant land use, intersections both with a positive influence, and lastly, frequency showing both negative and positive signs. 2 of them had a significant spatial variation, overlapping area ratio and frequency. And now, the coefficient sensitivity analysis, the consistency of coefficients as we remove points from the database, starting with the Euclidean approach. So we can see that most results changed. The results in red are the ones that remain similar to the complete database. So only a few of them remained similar to the complete database, mainly from the intersections and frequency variable. They had a good consistency. And for the network case, the pattern is similar. Most coefficients changed because of the missing data, but intersections and frequency showed some cases with good consistency. And now the comparison between coefficients coming from network and Euclidean distances. The pattern is more confused, is more spread, but we can see again frequency with a better performance comparing to the other predictors. But most predictors were different. And now the prediction accuracy in the calibration samples. First, we can see the results coming from Euclidean and network distances are similar or comparable. Some cases, the Euclidean distances had the best prediction results. Some cases, the network distances were better. And now the validation samples, an interesting result can be noted here because we expected something like this because we are increasing the percentage of missing data from the left to the right, but instead we got something like this. And now the conclusions. No clear relationship between the missing data and the consistency, but frequency and intersections had the best consistency. Some missing data cases had good prediction accuracy, as I saw in the last graph. The last scenario with the highest percentage of missing data had a good prediction accuracy, even in the validation samples, which correspond to the missing data. And similar prediction results from the network and Euclidean distances, but not for the coefficients. And finally, we have the fourth article. This article addresses, again, the prediction accuracy in sample stops, but a new specific objective is included in this case. We start to analyze the effect of the sampling method. This paper was submitted to a journal recently. And this paper basically is based on research gaps left from the other papers. As we saw in the last graph, no ascending pattern was found in the error for the validation samples. This may be because the sampling method might have an impact on the prediction accuracy. And also, we also noted a low number of predictors in the previous models because many pairs of predictors were highly correlated, so we had to exclude some of them from the analysis. So, recalling that the coefficients from predictors of bus ridership can vary spatially, and bus ridership data is spatially dependent, the fourth article created a method to account at the same time for all of these factors, all of these research gaps. And now we started with a dimensionality reduction technique, a very traditional one, the principal component analysis on 32 predictors and using data from nearly 20,000 bus stops in São Paulo. And then 10 components were extracted from the PCA. And with 10 components, we calibrated a geographically weighted PCA. The geographically weighted PCA, the spatial PCA, calibrates a different PCA for each point in the database. So in this case, each point in the database has different loading values. And the prediction having the highest absolute loading value for each point is called the winning variable, is the most important prediction for that point, for that specific point. And now the variable of interest in this case is the number of alightings over an entire day and one of the bus lines. And from the 10 spatial components, we performed a linear correlation analysis to identify the most correlated component to our variable of interest, the number of alightings. And then the single component was used as a predictor in the universal Kriging model. Again, the complete database was split into calibration and validation sample, and the validation sample is the missing data, but only 1% of missing data was used, the 30%. And the database was split based on 4 sampling methods. The first sampling method is a simple random, the traditional one, in which each point in the database has equal probability of being selected. And then we have the density of points. In this case, points located in regions with high density of points has higher probability of being selected. And we have a balanced and well-spread sampling. This method assures a good representation of both the predictor values and the geographic coordinates. And finally, the sample for extrapolation, which uses the more internal points to predict the variable of interest in the more external points. And now, starting with the spatial PCA results, I'm going to show only the spatial PC1 winning variables. And basically, as I said earlier, the winning variables can be treated as the most important predictors for each point in the database in the PC1, in the first PC. So we can see that in the center of São Paulo, employment is the most important, is the winning variable, the most important predictor. But we also have income, educational level, low standard residential area, and so on. And now, following the method, from the 10 spatial components, we perform the linear correlation analysis, and this analysis identified the PC5 as the most correlated component to alightings. And again, we can see the winning variables, and the most important predictor varies from one point to another. We can see a high representation of the no predominancy area, but also intersections in that specific case. And now, scores from PC5 were used as a single predictor in the universal Kriging model. And results from the calibration sample, we can see a negative parabolic pattern, and best results come from the sample for extrapolation, the last sampling method. But in the validation sample, this pattern was inverted, and we have the best results from the balanced and well-spread sampling. And now the conclusions. The spatial PCA is a promising tool to identify the most important predictors, even in cases with no availability of data on boarding and alighting. As all features are incorporated at the same time, this combined approach yields good estimates and a better performance of the balanced and well-spread sampling was noted. And now, following, in addition to the 4 main articles, we had also other 4 papers, all published, that had an impact on the thesis conclusions that I'm going to show you next. And now, finally, the conclusions from the thesis. Here, I try to translate the specific objectives into questions so we can see the contributions more clear. So the first question, regarding the first specific objective is, what are the intervening factors of stop-level ridership? And these are the predictions that appeared in the models, on all previous models, scaled by the number of times they appeared. So we have population with great importance, also income, frequency, the distance to the nearest metro station, intersections, and area with no predominant land use. Basically, 4 main groups of predictors were identified. The first one is social demographic factors, as population and income, and also bus network coverage, frequency, metro distance, bus network coverage. And in the third, we have some street design, the intersections variable. And finally, land use measures, as in the no predominant land use. The second question, what is the best modeling approach? We already know that spatial models should be preferred over non-spatial models because bus ridership data is spatially dependent. But what about univariate and multivariate approaches? We also saw that including predictors had made a good improvement in the goodness of fit measures. So we also multivariate approaches should be prioritized over univariate ones. So moving from a multivariate approach, 2 options are given. The first one is the interpolators from geostatistics, and the second one are the geographically weighted regressions. The interpolators from geostatistics, namely the universal Kriging method, could be used for cases with low availability of predictor data, because universal Kriging had the best estimates in the second article using only 2 predictors. And the local model could be recommended for planning purposes, land use planning purposes, because it accounts for the spatial variation of effects from predictors. But a third option can also be used, the combined approach between spatial PCA and universal Kriging. And now, what is the best type of distance between Euclidean and network distances? This question can be analyzed based on 2 perspectives. The first one is the prediction accuracy, and the second one is the coefficient estimate. In the case of the prediction accuracy, similar results were found for Euclidean and network distances, but as the network distances are the real distances that the bus line travels from one bus stop to another, these distances should be prioritized if there are resources available to calculate them. But in the case of the coefficient estimates, we saw the coefficients from Euclidean and network distances were different in most cases. Only frequency had a good consistency. So depends on the variable. Therefore, the final recommendations are either to use a local model with a distance measure varying from one predictor to another, or to use Kriging with network distances. And finally, the great question of all, are the spatial models able to solve the lack of stop-level ridership data? Well, we can say yes, because comparing calibration and validation results, we saw that many validation results had a prediction accuracy similar to a calibration result. And larger amounts of missing data do not necessarily mean worse results, as we saw in the third article. And the balanced and well-spread sampling might be the best sampling approach, sampling method to apply in practice. And finally, the conclusions of the thesis support the collection of travel demand data, not only in the scope in the bus stop level, but also in other spatial scales. And this can stimulate cities in the collection of travel demand data in field, so they can apply the spatial models and assure good predictions for the unsampled points. Obrigado. Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Samuel. I really like I really liked your presentation. Congratulations. Now is the time. This is the time of the jury. Right now, the jury can ask you questions, make some considerations, suggestions, and you will start with Jaime. So, Jaime, once again, thank you very much, and please feel free to make questions, to ask questions, and do some suggestions. Okay, I'm looking forward.
Obrigado, un prazer poder participar na banca de tese de Samuel. Me gustaría poder falar en português, mas penso que é melhor se mudo para o inglês, and I begin my question in English, where I feel more comfortable. So congratulations, Samuel. It's a very nice presentation. I really liked the document, the thesis document. It's very well written, and even though I don't work on this transport field, it was easy to follow, and it was interesting. I mean, I found very interesting this approach of yours and of the research work of Professor Zira, that has been working on the application of these spatial processes, trying to understand, trying to interpret better all this traffic information, this traffic data, and its application to this bus riding in Sao Paulo. So I have a few questions related to the geostatistical part, which is basically my expertise, not so much about the transit part of it, and I want to just make you a few questions about that. So the first one is, in the very first paper, you said ordinary kriging didn't work very well because it only uses one explanatory variables, whereas the local correlation models, they use several explanatory variables and therefore work better. My question is whether you never thought about using co-kriging, because you could have included several variables into the estimation. Yes, basically beating this problem that you mentioned. Did you ever consider using co-kriging?
Yes. I considered. I think in the second article, I also write in a recommendation to apply there another multivariate geostatistical approach that one could use besides the universal kriging approach was co-kriging. But I think I was so involved in the spatial and geostatistical models that I don't know, maybe, how can I say that? It's most a question of time and scope, I guess. Make the scope higher would demand more, I don't know, time, and maybe I prefer to limit the scope so we can go deeper into the models and universal kriging, ordinary kriging, and the spatial models. I guess it was basically this was the reason that I did not use the co-kriging, but I recognize that this is something that I should try.
Okay. And finally, you settle down in universal kriging. I mean, in the following papers, you use universal kriging, and you found very good results using universal kriging. The problem with universal kriging is that you formulate a trend surface for your random function, but you don't know the surface. You only know the shape of the surface, but you don't know, you are missing the scaling factors. I mean, the factors, the coefficients that you have to estimate, you have to fit for those. Which means that when you compute the variogram of the random variable, you need to know the variability of the residual of your observations with respect to your trend that you don't know. And I'm just curious, I mean, how do you manage this circular problem? I mean, how do you compute the variogram of a residual with respect to a trend that you don't know and that you will be using to make the estimation? So how do you solve this problem?
Well, I used some computational codes, mostly in R libraries, GeoRob, GStat, and the GeoR. There's a lot of packages, geostatistical packages on R. And basically, they use an iterative process. So first, they start with initial values for the, I don't know if they start with the trend or the same variogram coefficients, parameters, but there are initial values, and they performed a iterative process until convergence. And I do not have much control over it, but it's a well established method. I don't know, the name is the restricted maximum likelihood, and they account for both the trend and the same variogram coefficient parameters at the same time. So, but I don't know which one is addressed first, the trend or the same variogram parameters. I don't know which one goes first, but it's an iterative process.
Okay, thank you. Also, in the text, I have read several times that you say that some or all of the variables that you are dealing with are asymmetric. But I never understood exactly what you meant. I mean, you never explained what you mean by asymmetric variables.
It's because most variables, when you collect extensively a measure on field, they tend to be normal. Normal is the case in which we have a U shape, U inverted shape, you know. So we can have we calculate an average, a mean of the data, and all points tend to have a value close to that mean. So we have an U shape and like a bell, a ring bell, you know. In the asymmetrical case, this pattern cannot be found, as in the case of the transit partnership variables, because they are count data. When we are dealing with count data, we cannot see the ring bell shape. We can see an asymmetrical value because we have a mean that is moved to the left. Is not in the right, because values is low values of the variable have high density, have high number of occurrences, so we can have a high frequency of these values over low values of the variable. So imagine a graph, and we have near the origin of the graph higher values, and these values start to decrease as we increase the number of the data, the number of the data. So as we move to the right, we start with a high value, and the pattern is decreasing as we go to the right, because this is a nature of transit partnership data. We have most values being low values, so we have most values near to 0, 0, 1, 2 passengers. They have the highest frequencies. But when we are talking about high passenger volumes, such as I don't know, 200, 300, their frequency is very low. So we have this pattern, symmetrical value, symmetrical pattern. I don't know if I was clear,
You were very clear, but you said something that is written in the thesis that is not right. I mean, you say that when you use counted data, they cannot be symmetric. No, I mean, counted data could be symmetric. I mean, in this case, not symmetric because the data is not symmetric. I mean, because as you say, there is more frequency for the low values than for the high values, but the counted data could be symmetric. And you said it a couple of times in the thesis that they are not symmetric because they are counted data, and you said
this is not correct. The correct sentence was the transit partnership data is asymmetrical, and it happens to be account data.
Okay, that could be correct. Yeah, but the way I read it, I said, I mean, why he says that they are asymmetric because they are count data. This is not. And there is another thing that is said a couple of times in the thesis, and that it's also wrong, and it is that the Kriging, either universal Kriging or ordinary Kriging, is based on a Gaussian assumption. Okay, there is no Gaussianity assumption to derive the equations for Kriging. Okay, Gaussianity comes later when you want to make uncertainty analysis, when you want to make simulation, but Kriging itself, the only thing that requires that there is a stationary random function with some loose stationary if you use in universal Kriging, but there is no, I mean, at no point when you derive the equations, you say this must be Gaussian. No, there is no Gaussianity at all involved in the derivation of the equations. So. And unfortunately, this is something that is repeated very much, because it's true that later when you want to do simulation and then you want to do sequential Gaussian simulation, of course, you need a Gaussian random variable. But for Kriging itself, it's not Gaussian Kriging. I mean, it's Kriging. Kriging is Kriging, and you don't actually need to have any specific. It's distribution free. The only thing you need to know is the covariance and the mean in some cases. So that's something that should be you should just remember and should correct in the future. And then just two questions a little bit more on the side. I mean, I'm thinking about how you can use these interpolations that you are trying to do. How you can use this kriging, okay? And I see the data that you show. I mean, you show the data along the line, the bus line. You show the number of boardings at different locations. And you say, I want to use this kriging to estimate the values of the boardings in intermediate points. But I come from basically fluid mechanics. I'm very much obsessed with mass conservation. Okay, and if I see the line as it is right now, I say, well, there are all these boardings because this line serves this many people. Okay, 1,000 people, 10,000 people. So the point is that if you were to put more bus stops than the ones you have right now, it doesn't mean that you're going to have more people. I mean, you're going to still be serving the same people. And therefore, when you do the estimation of what may happen if I put a new bus stop in the middle, and you just do interpolation, at the end you end up with basically increasing the mass of people, increasing the population that is being served by the traffic line, no? by the bus line. So I don't know. I don't know if there is any thought about. I mean, in your area, where somehow you are trying to also bring in some kind of model of the mass of all the people moving along the line and getting in the bus and getting out of the bus, so that you somehow you keep the mass in the system constant. I mean, you are serving the same people, no matter whether you are using 10 bus stops or 15 bus stops. Okay, so I don't know. I was just thinking about. I mean, when you use this, whether these interpolations really make sense, or there should be a need for some kind of readjustments when you interpolate values, as if you put more bus stations in the middle. It's just some elucubration. Okay, it's a little bit outside of what you have done so far.
Okay. I think I agree with what you said. Notes I'm trying to show is on bus stops that already exist. They are there, but they don't have the information on boarding or alightings. But in that case, you said if a new bus stop is installed and we want to use universal kriging to interpolate and obtain the number of boardings, so we can help the bus network planning. This probably would affect not only the specific bus, but also the neighbor points. So if we are treating only one bus lines isolated, this could be used, but not in the broad context of the entire bus network. So what you said is correct for the broad context of the entire network. But if you are dealing with only one bus line isolated, the prediction is possible. But the results can also be applied to the case in which we have the bus stops already installed. They are there, but they don't have the information of interest. So in that case, I guess the mass conservation concepts are met.
I mean, they could still be met, because I mean, you have to take into account the alightings as well. I mean, so it means that people comes in the bus, but also they leave the bus. So that's why I said whether, I don't know, there is any kind of modeling. It's like, I mean, when we model groundwater flow, we are modeling how the water moves underground. And here, I mean, you are basically modeling how people basically move along the line and enter and exit the bus. Yeah, so that's what I thought. And it's the same as taking into account the capacity of the buses. I mean, at some point, the bus cannot fit any more people. So, I mean, if you know how many people are there already in the bus, I mean, you know that the number of alightings cannot be more than whatever is left in the bus. I don't know, some kind of model like that. But as I said, this is something a little bit on the side. And just one final question. Imagine that you have a time machine and you go back to the day you started your PhD. What would you do differently if you had to start again?
That is a good question. I could not expect this. I did not expect it, but let's see. Maybe musical creaking.
I mean, more in general. I mean, regarding your research career. I mean, your research years there. I mean, what did you miss in these 3 years or 4 years that you have had from the beginning? Probably you could have gotten better results.
There is a topic that I'm looking forward to work, and this is something that I have interest on working on, which is the accident modeling, because accident modeling has so much in common with the bus ridership data, because they are also count data, but accidents are more random, as I said, but accidents are also spatially dependent. So I already saw some papers working with the statistical approach to car accidents. So this is something that I want to dedicate my time on. So because it's very interesting to me to contribute to the safety planning, you know. And I guess this is something that I would have done differently. Maybe work with accidents, but I am also, I don't know. I do have a passion for transit ridership, so maybe the accidents come later, come in second place. But maybe if because our database was very difficult to found a database from boarding and alighting survey. In São Paulo, only 8 bus lines have this data. So maybe if we did not have this data, and if I don't know, if this data was not available for one city and we could use this data to the thesis, maybe I would have changed to the accident modeling, maybe. I think is something that but also working with spatial models. So the method maybe would not change that much, because accident share a lot of models in common with the bus ridership data. So this is something. It's not specific. It's not about the thesis specifically, but it's something maybe as a curiosity.
Okay, well, congratulations again. I have no more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Jaime. As we expected, you gave us the feedback of geostatistics, and we really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And right now, it's the second professor, Renata Oliveira. Renata, we are very glad and very grateful for all your contribution in the qualification exam. And I also looking forward to listen to your questions, okay? Please feel free. It's your time.
Hi, good morning, everyone, the members of the committee. Good morning, Samuel, Cira. I thank you a lot for the opportunity to assess this work again and to contribute to its development. And it's a work that really brings me lots of ideas and instigates me to study. Every time I look at Samuel's and Cira's work, I have to go and study some more. So it's very, very exciting to be here to participate in this committee. I would like to congratulate you for choosing this idea of a thesis made of a composition of papers. I think this is very valuable for the communication of science. I think it's a way to easing up, and I congratulate you also for the publishing of so many papers during your doctorate. One thing that caught my attention was that I think, Samuel, you can tell me some more. I think you started with a toolbox full of different applications, and you showed like a slide with too many applications, and this interoperability between them is always hard to do. And in the first paper, I saw that you focus more in our language and left some of the toolboxes applications you had been using behind. And I think this evolution is very nice because I advocate for FOSS, free and open source software, and I think it's a good move. And I saw this throughout the papers. I have some comments. I have some like specific comments, but I have some questions, and I organized them in variable choices, methodological decisions, phenomena, understanding, and suggestions. Okay. So first, I'll make you some questions about the variable choices and how. I love the question from Jaime about what would you do differently, and I put here some what if questions, and it's not intended to change our work thoroughly, but it's intended to make us think about these decisions because they are really important to for the outcomes of the work. So first, you talk about, and I'm not gonna separate the questions throughout the papers, okay? I'm gonna do like a whole set of questions for the whole pieces. In different places of the text, you mentioned that you consider variables representing strict design. What do you mean by that? What were the variables that characterized strict design?
Well, I guess it was only one variable, the intersections one. Street design includes a lot of features. So intersections is only one of them. So we can see with intersections specifically, we can see how many possible paths the pedestrian have to move from one point to another inside the catchment area of the bus stop. So some publications showed that if we have more possible paths, then that kind of area stimulates the use of the walking mode, you know. So the more intersections, the higher the amount of possible paths, and the higher the probability of walk. So this is come from the street design because some boroughs are designed to be I don't know, to have more like a lattice pattern. I don't know if you know lattice, and other ones are more like organic, you know, like the old cities in which the pets were created based on uh, based on how they were needed, you know. The so but I guess it's only one these intersections that reflect the street design. We wish I searched for the walk score. I wanted to use the walk score. I don't know if you guys know the walk score, and the walk score is still not supported for Brazil. They collect a lot of information, and basically the walk score is based on the amount of facilities you can access by foot. You know, so it's very interesting. This is something I could have answered Professor Heim the other question, because this is something I wanted to use the walk score as one of the predictors, but I could not use because WalkScore is not supported as a website, and the website only covers United States and Canada.
Mhm.
But
No,
this
it's okay. It's. I think the decision. I'm not questioning the decision of choosing the variables, but you in some parts of the text you use street design as a category of variables that you consider throughout the text, throughout the papers. So I think you should like not use this term street design and choose another one to determine. I think the intersections are more like a network characteristic than a street design variable. So I think you should like change this category of variables that you consider. Okay.
okay.
Another question is about frequency and overlapping. Did you think at any point of your work, and this comes out really strongly in paper 3, that these two variables could be endogenous in the models, like the frequency and overlapping are a consequence of demand, or demand is a consequence of them? Did you think you could have this confusion in the modeling?
Frequency and demand, yes. I don't know. I'm not sure about the overlapping one, but frequency. But we made a kind of trick to uh, to overcome this problem, which is we try to exclude the frequency of the bus lines of interest. So therefore, this was one I don't know method we could apply easily to overcome this problem of the endogenous endogeneity. But I agree with you. Frequency and demand is there is a relationship between them, and I don't know exactly what comes first and what comes second. So normally we have two equations, one for the demand and another for the frequency, and they are they work they work together, you know. But in this kind, I don't know if we could address this problem in a spatial model. I don't know if we have spatial models that already consider this problem, this feature, and therefore we had to adopt another solution. As I said, I excluded the frequency of the line of interest.
Okay, thank you. Uh, another issue regarding the variables, changing from one paper to another, you chose and you explained why you chose different lines, and also you did the same choices or the same change of choices regarding what is transit ridership, looking for the structure of the variable more than looking for the phenomenon. Do you think that if you had chosen, for instance, to consider boarding and alighting, the sum of these two variables throughout the papers, and for instance, one line or two lines throughout the papers, you could have some comparative material for you to work with? Like, because you go changing
Yes.
the dependent variable, and you go changing the object of investigation, the lines.
Yes.
And I thought you could like do something more stable regarding these choices throughout the papers. Did you think of it?
Yes. Yeah. This is something that I could have answered again. This is something that I could have done differently. As you said, choosing one unique bus line or the same bus lines throughout the paper, so we can in the final chapter able to compare them. It would be very interesting to know how the improvements throughout the papers apply to the case study. But I think I wanted to use as much information as possible from the database. You know, as I had to choose only one or two specific bus lines from the data set, I didn't want to left the other bus lines out of the analysis. So I was most concerned in, well, I have 8 bus lines. Why not to work with the other ones, and why only work with one or two? So I have tested the other bus lines, but as I said, there's a lot of criteria, and some of them had a low number of bus stops, or we
Mhm.
did have information on some of the predictors. But my concern in the first place was to use the most bus lines I could.
Mhm. Okay. Would you have done this differently if you could
Yes,
change
yes,
this?
definitely,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay. It's a curiosity. When you consider the area of the activities within space, the distribution of activities within space, uh, did this area consider the vertical uh, area or just the projection of the buildings?
No, no, no. You mean the I don't know, the inclination. I don't know if this term is correct, but we did not consider the slope. I found the word. We not consider the slope. We not consider the slope. Uh, we did not consider the slope because I don't know
Samuel,
how.
but it's not the sorry, but it's not the slope. I'm asking if you when you consider the area uh, of the buildings, like the activities within the buildings. So you had like commercial activities, residential activities. Did this
Okay.
area consider the verticalization? So how many stores? Stores? My English is terrible. How many stores you had? Or did it only consider the projection of each building?
Well, I think this data come from the GeoSampa. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I think Professor Mariana know GeoSampa, and I think they consider the all floors, all floors of the buildings, because they have a record of all land uses, the areas, and for tax paying, for charging the tax.
Okay.
So I think it's the whole area, considering all floors, all building floors.
Oh, great. Okay. Moving to methodological decisions, one thing that got my attention also regarding the changes within papers is about the catchment area of 400 meters. You mentioned, like, to justify this decision, you mentioned Zahu et al. 2003. But sometimes you talk about the network distance to 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 define the catchment area, and sometimes you talk about a buffer with the Euclidean distance. Uh, which one did Zhao work with? And do you think this change brings an interesting effect to the analysis?
Uh, yes, not only Zhao made this kind of analysis, but there are other papers, other research addressing this. Uh, what would be the best measure of the catchment area? And what they do is to propose different numbers, say 200, 800, 400, and then see how the models behave for this.
Mhm.
And they choose the best model, and they said, oh, the best model comes from the catchment area using radius of 400 meters.
Mhm.
And this is how work the study I cited.
Okay.
But in the first two papers, I used the catchment area with Euclidean distances. But after the qualification, I addressed your suggestion, and then we started to use the network distance. So we can call it the area of service, because we use the real distance that the people walks from their home to the bus stop. This started in the third article, I think, and I guess it does have an influence, but we cannot make another modeling using Euclidean distance, so it could compare both results, because it would be too much for a single paper, and the specific objectives would start to get a little bit fused. But this is something that I wanted to do, but I saw that it's better to define better the scope of the article, so we cannot miss something important. And basically, this is something that can comes next, a comparison between Euclidean buffers and network buffers, so we can see if the network buffer is really better than the Euclidean one. But in the thesis specifically, I could not perform this analysis.
Okay. No, it's
So
okay. It's fine. No problem. What brings my attention is just that you argue that you chose the other authors chose this thresholds regarding the best model and not the phenomena itself, like
yes, this is
observing.
important.
Yes, I think it's something that you should at least highlight throughout the paper, just putting some limitations regarding this. Okay. Another thing that caught my attention, and it's in fact two issues, is about, you don't explain throughout the papers, how did you convert the data from traffic analysis zones into catchment areas? What method did you use to do this? And also, how did you gather the activities, the functions within the city that were in blocks into the catchment areas? This is something that calls my attention, because I think this could change the analysis and the outcomes of your methods. And how did you do this?
Basically, I used geographic information system, GIS, and we consider the population is evenly distributed in the traffic analysis zone, but is a simplification of the reality. You know, we know the population is not uniformly distributed in an area, so this method has this limitation. And the blocks, the information from the blocks was collected also in a GIS, and we used a tool, the clip tool, so we can cut only the blocks inside the catchment area, so we could sum I don't know, the commercial area only inside the catchment area. So it's a simple method, is very used, but as the data is more disaggregated in the case of the blocks, I guess the results are more correct than in the case of population, because population is a very gross simplification.
Okay, but what if the catchment area had 2 or more traffic zones? How did you manage to work with that?
Yes. And, I had it's kind of interpolation. Is we calculate weights based on a percentage of area of each
Okay.
traffic analysis zone in the catchment area. So
Okay. That's fine, thank you.
Kind of a weighted mean, a weighted sum.
Mhm. Yes, that's something that we do, but it's also simplifications. But it's okay. It's what we do. Um, did you consider any other correlation coefficients to address count data than Pearson?
No, no, no. This is something that I didn't search. You mean other correlation coefficient, other
Yes,
than R, other than R? No,
other
no.
than Pearson correlation, like
Yes, yes.
Spearman or something like that.
No, no, no. In the third article, this was not included in the third article, but after the first revision, the third article is currently under review in the second round of revision. But in answering the reviewers from the first round, we calculate the Pearson a Pearson measure is the Pearson chi-square, a measure that trying to analyze if the Poisson regression addresses the asymmetry. No. I mean, if the negative binomial regression addressed the overdispersion of the data. So, but it appeared only on the response letter. We did not include on the paper because of the length of the paper. It was getting too big, the paper, and we we showed only on the response letter, but it's not a correlation. It's kind of a statistic test.
Okay, but if you had considered another correlation index, because you use this to select variables before modeling. So do you think you would have another outcome, another result if you considered another issue to select variables or another method to select variables? What do you think?
Um, I don't know because I don't see many papers using other correlation measures to select variables other than the Pearson one. So I cannot tell if using another measure of correlation yields a different result.
Mm-hmm.
But this is something that one should test to see if the outcomes are different if we used another correlation measure to select variables. This is something interesting to try.
Okay, or
Thank
maybe
you.
just try the variables within the models and not select them prior to the modeling process.
Okay, yes.
Okay, but it's something you could do afterwards if you're interested in going
Yes,
through.
thank you.
One last question about the methodological choices. You present many measures of goodness of fit, and why do you present so many measures? And what do you think were the best measures for your analysis, for your phenomenon? What do you think should be?
Well, the median of the error in percentage for me is the best because uh, this measure is related to the real value. Because sometimes we have a comparison that does not account for the real value. So if we have a real value, a high real value, and a low error, then this low error could represent a high passenger volume because the real value is high. Okay, so for me, this is the best one because of this relationship between the real value and the predicted value that I think it must be accounted for. So for me, this is the best measure. In addition, I had some evaluations of articles that told me that about this measure. that this measure could be better than the other that I have chosen at the time. So from this on, from this year to now, I started to apply only the error in percentage, so we can relate to the real value more appropriately. And
Okay.
and also the median allows to us to see is a common conclusion from the error, because if we have a median of 50%, say, we can say quickly that half of the database had an error lower than 50%, and half higher than 50%. So because of this, I think there is a good result to be reported.
It's nice to see your evolution throughout the development of the thesis. It's very nice. Thank you, Samuel. Now I have some 5 questions about the phenomenon itself. And one of them I think I brought in your qualification. That's about the spatial dependency in this the dependent variable, boarding and alighting per bus stop. I don't remember in what paper, I didn't highlight here. You say, however, as boarding and alighting per bus stop usually show spatial dependence, that is, points close to each other are more related than the distant ones. But how do you, because I saw it throughout paper 3 and only in paper 4, you bring another author than yourself regarding this statement that the boarding and alighting per bus stop is a spatial dependent variable. So how do you support this? Why do you think this phenomenon is spatial dependent?
Well, I think boarding and alighting are spatially dependent, mainly in Brazilian cities because of their process of development. So cities are created. I guess I talked a little about it on the introduction, but cities are created. People search for the places for their to live near to the activities places. So in the beginning of the cities, people choose to live near the activities they need. So near to a school, to the center of the city, to the church. So a common place where most activities occur. But over the years, people started to move to the periphery of the cities because of the price cost. So we started to note passenger volume coming from the periphery in the beginning of the day, which we call the commuting trips. And because of this spatial structure of the city, spatial dependence is created in the passenger volume, because in the beginning of the day we have a large passenger volume boarding in the bus lines from the periphery to the center of the city, where most job positions are available. And for the number of alightings is the opposite. People, the more close to the center, the closer to the center, the higher the volume of alightings. So this is a spatial dependence, because we have a pattern, a spatial pattern, an increasing pattern in the number of boardings from the periphery to the center, and increasing pattern in the number of alightings from the periphery, from the center in the beginning of the day, and at the end of the day, these two patterns are inverted. So
Okay.
this is pretty much what spatial dependence is.
Okay. Thank you. Let me see this here. Another in the introduction of the thesis, on page 32, you state that as spatial approaches rely on the assumption of spatial dependency, neighbor values must be similar, which is a situation that is not easy to achieve in the case of households and individuals. Do you think all spatial approaches rely on a spatial dependency?
Well, I don't, how can I say that? I'm not sure about it, but all I can say is spatial models, they are based on a spatial matrix. Even in the case of the geostatistical models, they rely on a spatial matrix of distances, and in the case of the geostatistical interpolators, is the semi-variable matrix, uh, which depend on the distance between points in the database. So if we are showing this kind of pattern, the neighbors affect each other in space. So neighbors closer would have higher weight than distant neighbors. And if we have this kind of structure inside the model, then the model rely on a spatial dependence assumption, you know. So if the model uses a weight matrix based on the distance between points, so it's kind of accounting for the spatial dependence of the data. It's trying to account for the spatial dependence of the data, because spatial dependence can be translated into a interaction between neighbors, you know. So any interaction of neighbors can be called this spatial dependence.
Okay, thank you. Another issue that caught my attention is that you mentioned in all the papers, you mention transit-oriented development as when you bring the idea of looking at the bus stop level, you argue that transit-oriented development would benefit from the implementation of policy for that would benefit from your work. In page 36, for instance, you say that in São Paulo, terminals and stations clearly follow the major employment axis. This sentence caught my attention, and I would like you to explain, like, how does terminals and station following employment axis is aligned to transit-oriented development?
Because these places are generally subcenters, places where transit stations are located are usually chosen by this criteria of the level of activity that the place has. So the higher the level of activity, I mean, the higher the probability of receiving a transit station, of having a transit station. And this kind of stimulate people to use the transit mode, because it's near to their destinations or the origin at the end of the day. So I guess this is something that really stimulates the use of the transit mode, because it's close to where people are. So it's kind of easy to use the transit mode because of this proximity.
Okay, thank you. And regarding transit-oriented development also, you state in paper 2 that these models, which consist of one of the most recent approaches to transit ridership, can efficiently quantify benefits of transit-oriented development. That is from urban policies applied in neighborhoods, which converge with urban planners' needs. So my question is, do you think that the structure of your modeling decisions throughout the papers, does it help efficiently quantifying the benefits of transit-oriented development?
Maybe quantify was not the most correct term to use, but what I meant was it helps to monitor, so to visualize how the neighborhoods respond to transit-oriented policies, because of the disaggregated nature of the data. When you have sequential modeling, traditional in the traffic analysis zones, we work with the regional modeling, so we cannot see the local changes because we use average data, And in the case of the bus stop, we have a local features being accounted for by the modeling, and so we can see how the urban policies, how they would affect the transit ridership data, the transit patronage, and so on. So, say if a bus stop had a good influence of, say, commercial and service area, and then most commercial establishments go to the area, so we can see how much these adding of commercial and service area affect the number of boardings. So it's kind of how much passengers are using the bus line from this change, and etc. Or I don't know, to install a transit station near a specific bus stop. How much passengers are using that bus stop after the transit station was installed. So is related to it. This is what I meant. But maybe quantifying is not the best word for it. Maybe.
Yes, I think you can just highlight that you would need, for instance, a before-after analysis or something that you could compare the changes through these models, through the measuring of the ridership in different time frames and in different contexts. Okay, yes. I think you should add something like that. That would work. And finally, the last question is about it's more a curiosity. In page 81, you state that the resulting conclusion would be that the larger the population around bus stops with negative parameters, the lower the numbers of boardings. What is the phenomena behind this? What do you think? Like dense areas, higher income? What do you think about it?
Well, this is something that I also was curious about, because it was kind of unexpected to me, because population and passenger volume should be always positively related. But one explanation for it would be the direction of the bus line. In some cases, the bus line is in the opposite direction of the main flows of passenger. So some areas with high population density would have a low passenger boarding or alighting. And also the time of the day. So these two features affect the sign of the picture. So maybe had some influence on it, on a negative sign.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, one suggestion, I don't know if it's a suggestion or just an exploration, like You talked about intersections, and you answered when I asked about the street design. You said intersections were really important for ridership, and you bring this in paper 3. Have you thought, or do you think of exploring further, if it's possible, some centrality measures within the network? Did you think about this as a future work or something?
Yes. This is something that I analyzed on my final project of the civil engineering course back in the Federal University of Tocantins, and we applied. Well, it was not a measure based specifically on the network, but it was a centrality index based on the number of on the spatial distribution of jobs around the city. So this is something that I found very interesting, and maybe is something that I could suggest for future work. Yes.
That's nice.
Is a line of research very interesting for working on future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm very happy to be able. I hope I have contributed to some thoughts regarding your work, and feel free to contact me anytime you need to lighten up what I suggested. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Renata. Thank you very much for your ideas. And right now, Mariana, please feel free to ask questions and make suggestions. I'm looking forward to listen your questions. Thank you again, Mariana.
Thanks a lot, Ciro and Samuel. Is it possible for us to see Samuel? Because I'm here trying to figure out what are his faces and.
So my
Can you not see him?
Are you not seeing me?
I'm not seeing you. Are you seeing Renata? Maybe it's just my configuration here. Let me check.
Renata, are you seeing Samuel?
It's great. Yes, it's great here.
Yes.
Okay, so it's my computer. Okay, now it's working.
Maybe you should try to change the layout, Mariana.
Yeah, I changed now.
Can you see right now?
Yeah, right now, yes.
Nice.
It's incredible. After pandemics, I'm still struggling with this configuration stuff. But again, thanks a lot, Samuel and Cira, for the invitation. This is really a pleasure to be here. I've been in contact with Samuel during a course that he made in São Paulo, and it was really a nice pleasure to have him there, because he was really a tough student, working hard, thinking, questioning, and it's really nice to be here in this moment of the final step from, or almost the final step from the PhD. So I would like first to say that I loved the thesis regarding some aspects. First, it's not easy to do a group of articles in a manner that you can show the structure and the storyline. And I think you manage really well to do that. I've been participating in other PhD thesis committees, and it's common to have a hard time in order to build the storyline in a way that you can really capture the whole idea. And I think you were successful in that, and I really congratulate you for that. Also, the presentation was really nice, and doing everything in English is a challenge. Even being here answering is a challenge. So this is something I would like to point out, because it's a good practice in the university, and it's nice to have students like you going for that. Also, regarding, I mentioned the pandemic. So you are a student that faced the pandemic years during the PhD. I know this is a lot. So also I would like to congratulate you for being here after all these fights that we had to manage, especially here in Brazil. And I would like to point that also. Then I'm going to organize what I'm going to ask about your thesis, trying not to say the same things that the previous Jaime and Renata already mentioned. So I have a work to do here. But I think I have a lot of points not covered that complement, and I will start by that. So one thing that's starting for the big questions, okay, the big reflections that I would like to listen from you. Jaime commented on his ideas regarding flows. And then Renata asked about the spatial dependency of your phenomena. For me, one thing that was really bothering me during the whole reading, I found it wonderful, but there was something that was, what about the network effect? So, starting from Jaime question, we've been working at São Paulo bus network and with crowding data. And one thing that comes to my mind is like when we enter the bus and the bus is already crowded, even though you want to be in the bus, this is a difficult thing to manage regarding the bus that you're going to choose. Sometimes you choose to use another line, not the line that you were thinking in first. So these flows that Jaime mentioned for me makes a lot of sense. And also the doubt regarding spatial dependencies on your phenomena also bother me a little bit. Because the buses have capacities and the users have to make choices that sometimes are related to the network flows that provoke crowding and then therefore are influencing your phenomena. So the first question I would like to ask you, have you had the chance to do like a field work and take this line and experience them?
No. This is something that my works is lacking. Field approach, me going to São Paulo and observing how the line works and how much the crowded affects the number of passengers inside the bus and how much passengers give up on using the specific bus line and change to another line. And this is something that my thesis really lacks. Sorry.
No problem. We have the data we have to make choices during the way. It's just I'm trying to have the best of my reflections during this precious time that we are here together, everybody, to discuss your work.
But this is something I expected you to bring to the table because you are from São Paulo and my database is in São Paulo, and I don't know São Paulo that much. How I knew Palmas in my civil engineering course because I lived in the city. So this is kind of this is something very important that I feel sorry to not be able to include in the thesis, but this is something very important.
So I would suggest, I think for the thesis itself, it's still in time. This is something you could add as a suggestion for future work that would like to explore whatever network in whatever city, experiencing what's happening and feeling the phenomena, maybe would give you other insights that would help you in the modeling process. I know that sometimes it's difficult, like we in our group sometimes uses examples from abroad, but in this case, São Paulo one is something that's not so far. Maybe it would be really nice to do that. Also, this question regarding the network, it appears on your title of the thesis. I know that the title in the University of São Paulo we cannot change anymore, but when I looked to your title, Travel Demand Modeling in a Bus Transit Network, I was expecting more about network through the articles. And then in the last article, you do use bus stops for the whole city, but still measures regarding the network, like the one Renata just mentioned, maybe between us or something regarding connectivity, or I don't know, could in fact bring the network effect inside your modeling. That's what I missed the most, while you're looking. Sometimes I said, wow, maybe here this is network effect that he's not capturing, because frequency is not enough. You do have something that happens here in São Paulo is besides the crowding, we do have a lot of problems of reliability in transit. So what happens is sometimes they come like 3 buses together, and then this is something that they do in purpose, just for you to know. But then this affects a lot the boarding and the lightning. So I think this is I will leave you as food for thought for afterwards. But also, I am not going just to do some critics. I'm going to give you some path. Also, we do have in our group some students working, like Pedro worked with crowding data, and he computed the crowding for each segment of the network. Oh. And this, with your study, maybe could bring a lot of insights for us.
Yes.
And so it's something that I'm going. Pedro already finished his master's. He didn't finish yet to submit his papers. So first his papers, then if you want, we can try together with Cira and try to do something. If you have still interest to do something after the PhD, okay. Sometimes we stay a lot of some time without doing anything related to the PhD because it's too much. Okay, so so this was my big question, okay? The big question regarding the whole thesis. And then now I'm going to go to some points, also with all the papers, but less critical in my reflection during reading your work. The second point is regarding values from the data. As I was the person who put Cira and you in contact with SPTrans, until the third paper, my head was burning because I said, wow, but he's working with the smart card estimation of a lightning and boarding. So there's a lot on smart card inference that could,
included.
Yeah. And then only in the third paper, you mentioned that the survey was done in 2012, and on 2017, SPTrans did like an inference to bring this to 2017. I would like you to better clarify the data that you use, because this is in your whole thesis, and to confirm if this information that came only in the third paper is really the one that you use through whole the papers.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Can you tell me a little bit more? So, is this the
Yes. Okay, I thought it was a suggestion. Yes, the transportership data that I use throughout all papers is this inference you said, SPTrans carry out using the boarding and alighting data from 2012, and they made an inference from the year 2017, and this data from 17 that I use is the data that I used throughout all the thesis papers. So maybe I should clarify a little bit more in the introduction. Thank you,
Yes,
Professor.
and I would like to know what were your worries about this inference that they made regarding the quality of the data that you are using to do your work. Because
Yes.
I kept thinking a little bit, but I didn't get there because I didn't know exactly how they did this inference. So it was okay,
Yes.
they did an inference, but how they did that? So can you give me more inputs regarding how they did this inference? Do you know more information on that?
Actually, I didn't have any information on this. I only had the database. I think Renato Arbex provided the database, and in the database there's a few PDFs, but in the text there's no information on it, only on the survey itself, like a couple of instruction to the team of people going to the bus lines to count the number of passengers boarding and alighting. So it was only a couple of instructions. There's no methodological text to explain how they made this inference. So I do not know this information, but I think I should include in the last chapter as a limitation, because it's really it's not a raw data. Raw data. This data was modified. Is an estimate. So I think I should highlight in the limitations section. So
Yes, I'm not worried really with the limitation. I think your work is wonderful. You really went deep in the methods. You organized. I love the way you bring the gaps in each article. You have a lot for a PhD, but my worry is about you going deeper on the reflections about what you are getting from your models.
yes,
Because I think Renato is someone that you can write in the mail and say, Renato, please, let's talk about this. Because maybe I'm just thinking, trying to think how Renato thinks, because I've worked with him a little bit. Maybe he used just marker data in order to make the inference, but maybe he used some population data in order to do this inference. And then maybe, so we don't know if he used variables that afterwards you are using in order to build your models.
yes. This is very concerning.
So all the carefully treatment that you give in each paper, I was like thinking, oh my God, and if Renata used this, this beautiful and so, so I would think that maybe in Apache, I don't know if you're going or somewhere, we can sit down with a peer, ask Renato what about how he did this whole inference thing, and then go back to your modeling and giving the mind the
Okay.
space to think a little bit deeper on your results. So this point regarding the specificities of data goes like together with the field work, you know. I think we do have challenge in spatial data science or in data science that is really worrying with what is happening in real life, you know. And as I am in a center for metropolitan studies with a lot of researchers from social science and different backgrounds, I learned that sometimes we are pushing a lot with methods, with more data, and we didn't stop to think in the first place.
Yes,
You know?
yes.
So I would mention that a second thing that maybe could be like a suggestion is like whenever you take the data, okay, go deeply to know about, because this could make a lot of difference in the
Yes, definitely.
Okay, and then one small thing is regarding, Renata already mentioned and asked you about some special GIS methods, like the zoning and how you did the computation regarding the service area. And came to my mind that I was missing, like pictures with this catchment areas, you know. We've been using in our group the supplementary data a lot, supplementary part of articles a lot. I'm not sure if you had in these articles and I didn't access. I'm so sorry if I didn't do my job.
No.
I could stop and go and check, but I didn't. So maybe you had supplementary material for this.
No. I haven't. I haven't included.
So I would advise you to use a lot. You know, what they say in the Center for Metropolitan Studies is that a good article, you do have like 15 pages of the main article, but then you have the double in supplementary material in order for people to check, or even the codes and the scripts, everything available. So this is another question that I would like to make to you. Are you going to leave scripts, codes, and all related stuff open?
In the third, I cannot open the boarding and alighting data because it's held by SPT.
But the aggregated modeling stuff and the scripts regarding
Yes.
modeling.
The first and second papers, I used all scripts from the R libraries, the R packages. So I haven't created any script for these papers, but for the fourth paper and maybe for the third one too, but in the SAS software, that I should include in the supplementary material, as you said. It's important. I recognize that.
I think
important.
it's a good practice, you know, because you mentioned that many times for the sake of brevity or for the sake of, and then you just mentioned you could leave the table behind for us to check or for people who are interested. This is something that I like to do, and I've been. I am always happy when someone does this also, so we can look further when we are interested about their work. So going back to this GIS methods, did you have the chance to work? Did you took out places that were like parks or there were no people living? I'm not sure about your area. If some service areas, I'm guessing that maybe you got some places that were non-urbanized, or in fact, there were services or things that there was no population there. Did you treat this in the GIS?
Yes. Because I had the total area of the catchment area. And then we have the area coming from the commercial and service area, park area, and the resulting area subtracted from these, urbanized areas are the areas with nothing.
Great. So I think you should mention, if I'm not wrong, you didn't mention this. You could use the dosimetric word. The dosimetric mapping will give this information for all the people that are from spatial, and then we will know that you did that, and we can go. So adding from Renata's comment, you can say that you used like an average base, area average base, to do the specialization, and also that you took care of the dosimetry in order to build your variables. Okay, and then a little bit related also with one comment from Renata, I was thinking a lot is regarding the vertical residential areas. We do have now, for a while now, the LIDAR data from São Paulo. And this gives us the height of every building we do have in São Paulo. So this is something also, apart from crowding, that maybe we could use in the models and work a little bit, and thinking on future scenarios or impacts in future and things like that, including a better information of verticalization would be really nice. Because what's happening in São Paulo, unfortunately, is that we do have a master plan that is inducing a lot of verticalization, not in the way that the transit-oriented development would like to. Besides, the argument used to that was the transit-oriented development. So if we had some connection regarding your models and the verticalization, maybe we could extract more regarding the planning of the network. That would be really useful. And this is something that I came to my mind while I was reading your work. Another thing, I totally agree with the comment that Renata made regarding the transit-oriented development. I think it's nice to mention transit-oriented development, but you have to position there, because there is this thing that what's really inducing to a transit-oriented development, not necessarily to have more people boarding in buses, crowded buses, with low-level services and everything that we have.
I agree.
Yeah. In these areas. And going back to the network, coming to a question that came in my mind many times, but I was not able to bring something to you. I would like to bring something to you, but I couldn't, is regarding the research empirical design. As Renata mentioned, you were varying the lines through the papers, but also I was thinking if you could think a little bit more in like how choosing control and treatment pieces of the lines, maybe, to do the whole comparison, and this is something that you could like I don't know if you're going to continue in São Carlos, but maybe in your postdoc, I don't know, you could go back and think in a research design where you think in control bus stops and treatments, bus stops in advance, and then select the bus stops that you are going to use in order to model in a way with more strategy, and separating the ones that you are going to use to test, but exploring the diversity. I know that's just a line, but you do have some, you are catching the south of São Paulo with some variation there. So maybe a little bit more of thinking regarding control and treatment could give you also other insights for you to work in the future. So I would like to leave this suggestion as well.
Okay.
There are some parts, then this is regarding the writing. I think I felt that there was really a nice evolution from the first paper to the third, regarding how the English was much improved in the third article.
Yes.
You know, there was a huge difference, and it was really nice to see this progress. But I agree also with Renata that sometimes you dream a little bit in the phrases that you use, and then the phrase is too much for the evidence that you have in your papers. And I'm not going to say specifically now regarding the conclusion. Like Renata asked you regarding the street design, and then you use this in the conclusion, but you just use the intersections, you know? There's a lot of things going on regarding walkability in São Paulo. We do have some, you know, Bruna Pizal, I think.
I think yes.
Yeah, she's working with walkability indexes, and she measured the length of sidewalks in São Paulo, and there is a huge difference regarding the length of sidewalks in periphery and in center. But, and I'm going to give a spoiler from Bruna's PhD thesis, what we are figuring out is that all this European theory regarding producing more walking trips or walking trips that goes to public transport trips, they are really global north experiences. But what happens in São Paulo a lot is that people walk because they don't have another option. They don't have money to go to the bus. So even though you have a different street design that you would expect to have a better walkability, they are walking. So this comes to another point that I think it's two values for me, and I would like to emphasize, you know, in your work, is regarding the differences, the social demographic differences that you do include as an income variable, but there's much more to be said about that. So one thing that I'm not sure, but I think you now confirm with me, did you include in some of the models the captivity of public transport or not?
No.
Yeah. So this is something also that I was missing, because this is really like fundamental, you know. People go to use the bus because they do not have another option. So
Yes.
this would really affect your boarding and aligning, you know. And also, sometimes when I saw the commercial areas in your results, we had a work with smart card data and another work with mobile phone data that pointed out that sometimes low-pay jobs take people for residential areas because they work as cleaners, they work as, so they are going to residential areas in order to work. And usually in transportation engineers, they do not consider this as a possibility, because we think in the classical demand theory, and then we just forget that we do have low-pay jobs in unequal cities like São Paulo. Another point that was hurting me regarding the equity issue is when you were saying that maybe your modeling would help to plan future networks, because it would help to see when you do have more demand. But there's one thing that I love from São Paulo is the coverage of the network. Because sometimes we're not putting the bus there just because you do have a lot of people to go there. But we are giving the bus there to them because they do not have any other option to move through the city. So I know that some papers are already published, but maybe the both papers that are not yet, you could take a little bit care for this, while positioning that just looking to demand would be really nice to reposition transit network in São Paulo, because there's a lot more going on. And as I like to say, even the optimization models, we have to switch the main goal when we want to look in the lens of transport justice. Okay, so I'd like to provoke you in order to take care while you're doing your final considerations or discussing, and remember that people are using a lot the bus because they need and not because they are choosing to do it. Okay. And then I'm almost getting to my list. Let me check. I made some, I'll just check quickly if I'm not. Yes, there's one big question still that I will choose to talk about that, even though I have some small comments that then afterwards I can scan because I did in paper. Because after pandemics, I'm too tired to be working a lot in the screen, so I can scan and send you. But there was one last point I was provoking into how your work, and you do mention, I think it's in the third or in the fourth paper, is regarding the temporal dimension. In the first paper, you choose an evening, if I'm not wrong, period.
Yes, even peak hour.
The others, you use the entire day. Am I right?
Yes.
So this connected with the network functioning and the city functioning. There's a lot in this decision, because depending on the direction of the bus, depending on the time of the day, depending where you are in the city, everything together makes the boarding and the lightning differences that in this stage sometimes you couldn't include because it was too much. You do mention in the fourth article this space-time possibility. And I don't know if you remember him. I think you were in one class that he talked with us. It's a guy from geosciences, geology, that works with kriging, space-time kriging.
Yeah, I never worked with space-time kriging, but there exists a model called the spatial temporal kriging. But as also exists also geographically weighted regression that accounts for the temporal we call the temporal association dependence as the serial dependence. So we also have in the local modeling framework a model accounting for the serial dependence. But I thought in the thesis I should not go to these places because maybe focus only on spatial dependence models and not including this third dimensional would be more appropriate for the thesis because we could go deep in these models and do a lot of stuff with.
But maybe for the future you could, not including like a space-time fancy Kriging thing, but thinking a little bit further, if you would choose the entire day, or maybe if you could choose like some time bands that are more related to the phenomena and that would give you more place to think about what's happening, So you don't need every time to go to the fancy things that sometimes put everything together and then in the end you don't know what's happening. But you can sometimes do some research design decisions that will account on this phenomena particularities. And also regarding your results, that was like the network versus the Euclidean distance, your line is really straight, So, and this is not this is not the common type of line that we have in São Paulo. So maybe it was difficult for you to capture a really significant difference regarding the network because, in your presentation example, you used not a straight line to explain. So, but your line is straight. So maybe you're not capturing because it's too straight. But then this doesn't mean that we'll have effect. It could have effect in others. I think you mentioned that you should always use network if you can, but I'm not sure if you mentioned that maybe this is because your line is too straight. Did you mention that?
No. I don't think so. But it's something that I should include.
Yeah, because as this is straight, it's really close to Euclidean, and that what's different than that, So maybe this is something because this is one of your goals, and maybe this was just the problem regarding the data or the lines that you are working on. And so I think I'm almost in 1 hour here. So sorry for taking this long time. I will stop here, but I would like one last question. Sorry, regarding the specification of data and everything else. There is term that you use that's regarding the line use. That's no predominance area. What do you mean by no predominance area?
Is the case where a lot of other types of land use are gathered together, so we can have industrial, residential, commercial at the same block.
Okay.
This is classified as no predominant area.
Or really mixed.
Yeah. Yes.
So maybe because you use the mix concept in the beginning of the thesis, you can continue with the same category in order to make it easy. And then in the supplementary material, you could specify for us what's this no predominance or mixed area. What we've been doing during our within our research group is that we've been aggregating the classes in order to check the mix, because sometimes gives us a better information if you do have more residential or just more commercial services and industry together. If we are looking like to accessibility jobs, maybe this gives something more helpful than the mix entropy or whatever index that can be measured. So This entropy measure, I've been fighting with that for some time now. And I like the idea to choose to say which class is there. But then when you say that's no predominance, it would be nice to understand how you computed this no predominance. Like if you have 10% of each, 20% of each, I don't know what's this no predominance that you are considering in all your modeling. Okay.
I forgot to mention the other time, but one thing that I would have done differently is to aggregate this type of land use, because some catchment areas sometimes had a low value, 0, from several land use types. So aggregating them would overcome this problem. I
Yes,
think.
we worked with a cellular automata, and it was terrible to have a lot of classes, and then we aggregated everything, and then it worked, you know. So this is something that we've been struggling also in São Paulo land use data, and I think it's a good practice to aggregate, aligning with the meaning that it has on your model. And to finish, truly, if you were going to give some feedback to ASPETRANS, and I think you should do it, you know, rather than just send them the papers. If you're going to summarize, okay, ASPETRANS, after my PhD, thanks a lot for the data that you've board or gave me for my PhD. And I think for you, it would be nice to.
Okay.
Have some thoughts on that? And if not, that's okay, because I know the PhD defense, it's a lot. But I think it would be nice for you to go to ASPETRANS and give them a feedback. For the whole scientific community's sake, so we can go back there and have more data and give this positive
feedback,
and then we can continue to indicate people, okay, this one wants to do the PhD, and then sometime the what you learned can come back to the municipality. I think this is important.
Yes. I think I'm gonna try it because this could I don't know, encourage them to share the other data they have when someone goes and asks them to share some data, they would feel more encouraged to do so. So I think I'm gonna give this feedback to them.
Okay, thanks a lot, Samuel. So, Sira, I finish here.
And about Ampet, I'm definitely gonna be there. So
okay, so beer is already arranged.
We're gonna have that conversation.
Yes, I'll ask Renato as well.
Mariana, thank you a lot. I wrote a lot of notes here to discuss with Samuel, maybe for future research. I'm really grateful for your ideas, as usual. Thank you a lot, okay? As you continue, I could ask you, please, can we have a 5 minutes break? It's possible? Okay.
Yes,
so
it's
let's good. Go. 5 minutes, see you soon.
Eu também.
Okay, we come back right now. So, right now is the time for Antonio Nelson, the last but not less important by any means. Antonio Nelson, it's a pleasure for me, and I'm looking forward to listening your questions, okay?
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, Professor Jaime Gomez Hernandez. It's really nice to meet you. It's also good to meet Mariana and Renata once again. It's always a pleasure to meet you all. And I'm very glad that this committee has a majority of female participants. It's a good sign. I think we are improving in this topic. Let's hope that this is the pattern for the future, because women are usually very good, let's say, addition to this kind of event. They always bring good ideas and suggestions, and it's nice to have them here. It's tough to be the last one because there's nothing left for me, just a few things. And even some of the things that I planned to talk about were already discussed by the previous examiners. So unfortunately, I will have to go back to some of these comments that have been done already, because I'm not very convinced that they were fully explored at this point. So I will mention when I get there. Of course, most of my questions are related to format at this point, because, as I said, the important issues were already covered. So I will start with the well, first of all, I want to say that's really a pleasure to have you, to be here and to see your development, Samuel. You arrived here 6 years ago, right?
Yes, yes.
I had a very good impression when I first met you. Because you were very serious, very focused, and it's really interesting to see that you will even develop further in terms of research skills. So you were a very competent professional, and now you are also a very competent researcher, which is very good for us. It's kind of a sign that we managed to do what we are supposed to do, which is to help you grow. And I'm very happy for you.
Thank you.
So let's start with a few questions, very basic. You have a list of publications in your second page. And it's interesting that you mentioned that you submitted a paper to a journal, but you don't say the name. Why?
Because because some journals we have desk rejection when the editor does not send the article for reviewers,
Yeah.
because maybe they judge that the article does not follow within the scope of the journal. So so because of this, we wanted to. I didn't want to put any name, because maybe at the time of the defense, the article was not in the journal anymore. You know,
Did it happen? Or you don't know yet?
I didn't use any journal name there, but yes.
Okay.
The first journal, the editor said the scope of the journal was not appropriate to the content of the article.
Okay. The time will come when you will have this published, I'm quite sure, given the quality of the contribution. So it's just a matter of finding the right journal. So it's not something to worry about. Well, let's move to the abstract. And then I have one of the points I mentioned I would go over again, even though two of the examiners have mentioned this, which is the matter of street design. It was really strange when I read this in the abstract, because I was thinking about the street design as something that's related to the general features of the space in terms of urban furniture, width of the sidewalk, and that's not the point here.
No.
So essentially what you're talking about is about network design, not street design.
Okay.
But even though I'm not sure that network design would be a better way to express what you mean, maybe you should say network design is a possibility, but also maybe you could use the term street layout.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Because that's what's related, I guess. So it's something that you could use instead of street design, because street design, as everybody mentioned, is almost everybody mentioned, is something that's broader than what you really mean with this term. That's why I brought this back once again. I also have some suggestions in the introductory part about the maps that you presented in figure 1.1. There are several things here that I don't like. I'm sorry. It's a very neat map. I like the colors. I like the general layout. But I think there are things here that are strange, to say the least. One of the things is the way that you presented the scale. Scale is a linear feature, essentially. I mean, in the way that you are representing it here is a linear feature. You are representing the scale, the graphic scale, using a polygon, which makes no sense.
Okay.
I mean, you should have a line with several subdivisions, at least 2, and then mark the distances, the scale, along the line, not as a polygon, because this gives the impression that's a different thing. And you use this kind of symbol in all maps that you produce.
Yes.
And it's a suggestion for you to adopt a linear representation. Another thing that's strange, when you talk about the transit ridership, the values that are in your legend are using a logarithmic form. And it's really strange because this is a presentation of the data, not a presentation of variables.
Okay.
So you should use the actual values.
Okay.
Another thing that's interesting here, and it's something that you used in several papers, and I think you should really pay attention to this, is that you mentioned income. And you never said that this is a monthly figure. And why is this important? Because in some places, income is mentioned as an annual figure.
Yes.
So for someone who's not from Brazil, they have no idea of the values. And it's really strange to see income and you don't know exactly if that is per month or per year. So it's a suggestion for you to adjust this in your maps. And finally, in the first map, see, this map took me a lot of time to examine it. There's a lot of things here that were not, I mean, could be better. The first map, you have a lot of lines, and they are all connected to the bus routes or the bus lines, but there's no title in the legend. So you see strange numbers like L407, M10, and you don't know exactly what this is. So I suggest you put bus names or bus line names or some or codes or something like this, because all the other maps have this except the last one, which is no need for that. But and again, in the previous page, when you mentioned the maps, in the last paragraph, you say the map is presented in a logarithmic scale. Only one map. I mean, you are referring to the map, which is a part of the figure with 6 maps, and you don't know exactly which one is it. In fact, you shouldn't have this logarithm scale here, so you should change the text accordingly. Yeah. Okay. Also, in the introductory part, you mentioned in your page 26. In the third paragraph, the one that starts with the travel demand variables and so on, immediately after you mention Tobler, you say the main aim of the thesis is to overcome the collection limitation by using da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's interesting that you say that this is the main aim, but it's not exactly the objective, the general objective that you stated on page 23, I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think you should match the objectives along the text. I mean, of course, if you look at the objectives of each individual paper, they are different and they are supposed to be different.
Yes.
But the general objective has to be coherent from the beginning to the end. I mean, in the introductory part and in the conclusions, they have to say the same story and to be essentially the same.
Yes, I agree.
Of course, small variations are acceptable, but that's not the case here. And also, when I mentioned this, you say that the main aim of the thesis, and it's interesting because what is the thesis for you? You're talking about a philosophical expression, a thesis, or a document?
The document.
So it's interesting because you say when you move down and you go to the last paragraph of this page, you say the general objective of the thesis. Is it the general objective of the document, of the research? So you should clarify this. Because the document, I mean, what's important here is the general objective of your research effort, not the document. The document is a representation of what you've achieved.
Okay.
So you have to, I mean, you have only two parts in this document that are new, the beginning and the end, and the end. And you should make sure that they are impeccable in the same way as the articles are. So you did a wonderful job in the articles, and I think you should revise these parts to be as good as the articles. I mean, I'm not saying that's really poor, and that's not the case, but you can improve small details that make this a wonderful document in general. Yeah. Okay. And then let's move on. I'm sorry to tell you that you forgot to mention a paper, a reference in the paper that's already published.
That's bad.
Yeah, you know that? Yeah, it's too late to fix it, but it's true. I will leave it for you to check. But it's interesting because usually the editor or the staff involved in the revision of the document, they check it. Yeah, but they didn't, or they missed it. Also in this first paper on page 39, you say in the results of discussion, you said something that's interesting. You said that it can be stated that most 856R10 line users in the period in the evening period come from metro lines. How can you say that?
Well, it's an assumption or deduction based on the negative sign of the variable, because the higher the distance, the higher would be the negative effect. So if you have a lower distance, if the bus stop is close to a metro station, we have a low value of the distance. Consequently, we have a high passenger volume. So it's a deduction.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but you said that it can be stated.
Okay.
It's not really a statement. I mean, you have no I mean, you have
a small evidence.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay.
I mean, it's something that's already published, but it's just for you to think about the way that you choose the words. As Mariana mentioned, there are some points in the first article that could have been improved by the time that you published it. It's not the end of the world. I mean, nobody's going to be critical about this, but it's not the best way to state this or to use
the first two papers were translated from Portuguese, so maybe maybe the reason for that might be this.
Yeah, sure. Also, in the same part of the paper, you mentioned it's something that's really I don't know if I got it right, but you say, moreover, it's important to mention that boardings and residential commercial service area, which is the name of variable, were zero for 3 and 5 bus stops. How can it be 0 for an area? I mean, you don't have commercial service, residential. You don't have anything in that area. It's totally empty.
We don't have this kind of land use, but other land uses. that were not included in the model.
Like
in the
what,
model.
industrial? Or something?
Yes, industrial or area of parks and something like this, or area with no predominant land use.
Okay. This is the other topic I will come when the time arrives here, because this is something that I also found it was confusing, as Mariana mentioned. Okay, let's move on to the second paper. The second paper is only with a small observation here on page 55. You said something on the first paragraph of page 55. You say that again points to a better performance of local models compared to the global version, Poisson regression and negative binomial regression, respectively. When you talk about respectively, when you use this term respectively, it implies an association between elements. You have 2 and 2, or 3 and 3, and 4, or 4 and 4. You have always an equivalent number of elements, and that's not the case here, apparently. So it's something that I will leave the notes for you later on, and then you can check it. But of course, it's too late to change it. This is just for you to check if this is it's the case. And it's also interesting in that part of the paper, a few lines below that, that although the results were satisfactory, the authors compared UK results only with the linear regression. And I had the impression that you compared with ordinary Kriging as well.
Yes, yes.
So it's something missing here.
Okay.
I guess.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. So it's again, it's too late to change it. Okay. Let's move on. Sorry, I have to hold the microphone with one hand and change the pages here, so it's taking me longer than I. Yeah. There are some minor mistakes here. I will skip this because it's not relevant and it's already published, so I will not make you so. Okay. Okay, thank you. Let's go to the third page. I think that's the third one, right? Yeah. On page 93, again, here I see a problem because you have conflicting objectives in two parts of the same paper. Not exactly conflicting, but they're not stated in the same way. So on the first part, you say the main objective of the present article is to model transit ridership using geographically weighted negative binomial regression with distances along the bus network. Okay, I like it. But then when we move on, you say contributions, research questions, and hypotheses. You say the main objectives are to evaluate the importance of distance type, the need for that kind of model, GW and BR, and the impact of missing data. So you see, you are not saying the same thing. In the first case, you did not mention missing data, and here you are mentioning it. Also, you say the objective is to evaluate the need for the model. And I don't think you are evaluating the need. You are evaluating the potential advantages or disadvantages of the model.
I totally agree.
Yeah, so I don't.
This was a requirement from one of the reviewers.
It was not me, right?
No.
I did not review your paper.
I like if it was you, but unfortunately. Yes.
Okay. So I'm not saying something that's too strange here. Regarding the first, still in this paper, regarding the table, the observations that you made at the end of table 2, you said that something is represented by the number of vehicles, negative sign. I did not find it. Where is it?
Sorry.
You said by the end of the table, you have some remarks at the bottom of it. And then you said, asterisk symbol, single asterisk is representing the number of vehicles. And you say negative sign. Where is it?
Okay. Let me explain that. Just a minute. Basically, I didn't want to show number of vehicles as a new line of the table. So because I have already shown the, I don't remember, but I guess it's the number of households with no vehicle in it.
Yeah, that's
right?
the first variable.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So instead of including a new line and using the variable of number of vehicles, I included the papers using the number of vehicles instead of the number of households with no vehicle. But as they have inverted meanings,
Yeah.
as one has, if one has a positive sign, the other one will have a negative one. So
Okay.
this is what I try to describe in the note.
I mean, it's interesting because the coding, in general, the coding that you have used is really clear. 1, 2, 3, 1/2. It's everything clear. When it comes to that part, then it's really strange.
Okay.
So probably one of the reviewers will complain about this because this is. It did? No, not yet. Okay, because this is not clear.
I'm gonna review that.
In the same paper, in the very same paper on page 97, when you have the table with the variables, you say the number of intersections, and that's again something that the previous examiners already mentioned. And it's, in fact, what you were talking about is the catchment area, right? So I suggest that you add this to the name of the variable, number of intersections, and then in parentheses you say catchment area.
Okay.
There's a proxy for catchment area or something like this. And then it comes that other point that Mariana mentioned, no predominancy. I look at this map and say, what is this? Predominancy of what? Then I had to go back and check the text, and finally I found it, and I was wondering, why not no predominant land use or mixed land use? And the problem is that you use this with different formats in different parts of the article.
Okay.
And it's never clear, except in the explanation when it appears in the first time. So it's something that I think you should really change if you have the opportunity before it gets published.
Okay. And maybe the best one is only to use no predominant land use, right?
Yeah, you have to mention land use because that's what's all about. Or mixed land use, but no predominant is good enough, I guess. And then still in this article, you mention factors affecting the stop level transit ridership. And then you end this page 102. You say, together with the intercept, all coefficients from the intersection variable with statistics significant and so on. And then you end this paragraph with this sentence. Therefore, neighborhoods with high density of intersections are richly supplied by the transport infrastructure of both motorized and active modes. So what? What is it? What's the conclusion? Why is it relevant? And that's the same thing that Mariana mentioned. I mean, there is something behind this that's not clear. You have to explain it a little bit further. Yeah. Still regarding this paper, I strongly suggest you change the colors you used in figure 5, because it's impossible to distinguish between the colors. I mean, they are quite similar, except for the last one. And even in the case of the last one, it's difficult to see the difference. The points are very small and close together, and if you have a slight variation in the color, it's impossible to recognize which one is it.
Okay.
So I strongly suggest that you go for a very, let's say, opposite color palette. Go from
Okay.
red to, I don't know, green or something like this, as you have used in your presentation. In your presentation, the color palette is perfect. It's really nice.
Okay.
But in this case, it's essential because the dots are quite small and it's difficult to see the difference. And it's important. I mean, it's not because it's fancy, but it's because it's essential information. That
Yes,
you need.
yes.
Let's move on. Okay, another suggestion is still in the same paper. In figure 7, you have one column that's referring to calibration and one column that's referring to validation. And you mentioned this in the text. You finish the sentence, results from calibration and validation samples are displayed on the left and right respectively. Okay, I think you should leave it in the text, no problem, but you should add it in the figure because the figure has to be
Self-explained.
self-explanatory.
Okay.
Otherwise, I have to, which one is validation? I have to go back to the text and check it again, and it's not really nice, and it's so easy for you to fix this. Also, when you have the tables, when you have the different scenarios, and for each one of them you have calibration and validation, for me it was a nightmare to distinguish the rows. You mentioned, okay, it was something for calibration and for the variables something. It would be easy for you to use different backgrounds, light gray or dark gray, as you used in your presentation, for us to distinguish the groups or the lines. For instance, you use light gray for calibrations in all scenarios and dark gray as a background for validations in all scenarios. And then it would be easy for us to distinguish the rows of the table. There are some minor things here, but I'm not worried about this. I will leave this paper, this document with you, and then you can check. And if you have doubts, you come to me, and I will be happy to clarify. In your table 1 of page 116, you were talking about the different papers, the different studies, and you went up the table with your own contribution to that topic, which is in this case summarized in 4 papers. And it's interesting because you have a column that you say the limitations of each one of the articles of the studies. And when you come to this, to your part of the table, you only repeat the same limitation. The survey covered only 0.6% of the bus lines. And that was not the only limitation. Otherwise, why would you do a next study? If you have only one limitation, what's the gain of doing something else? And of course, if you go to the papers and you check each one of them, you see that you end up the papers stating the limitations. So you should go back, check the limitations, and add it here.
Okay.
Because it's not just the number of the size of the data set that's a limitation here, but also the different points that you raise yourself in the papers, in each one of the papers. This is still to be submitted, right? So it's something that you... that's the one.
Is transportation. Initial checks.
Oh, okay. You never know where you... Okay. In the next page of the same paper, you mentioned that stop level studies show in table 1, which is the table that I just mentioned, shown in table 1 that have not performed the validation analysis are omitted in table 2. And then one of your studies had a validation, at least one.
Yes.
It should be in table 2, right?
I did not include it.
No, you were not here.
Oh, so I missed. I missed.
But there is one with the validation.
Yes,
procedure.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Another thing in this text, and this is probably the most important one because it's still time for you to change it or to adjust it. Right after table 2, you say that in general, a validation step is found only at the bus stops, no missing data analysis, and then because rail ridership can be easily counted as passengers always pass through a turnstile. Not always. If you go to the Nordic cities, the big ones with metro stations, the entrance and exit is free. They trust you. You are not counted. I think in Sweden is like this, in Stockholm, and also in Vienna. Some stations you don't have a turnstile to cross.
Oh, that's good. I didn't know.
So when you say always pass, I would say almost always.
Almost, okay.
A suggestion for the map of figure 1, when you talk about the materials and method of this very same article, you said perimeter of São Paulo. I would change this to legal boundaries of the municipality or something like this. Perimeter is not really telling the story here. It's something that we use in Portuguese, but in English I would say legal boundaries.
Okay.
Formal boundaries or something like this. Also, in table 3, the 7th variable, you said number of shelters. You're talking about bus shelters, right?
No, bus stop shelters. The
Yes.
coverage.
Yeah. Bus stop shelters.
Yes.
You said shelters.
Okay.
Shelters could be many different things.
Okay.
Including shelters for people with homeless population, which is the case in São Paulo. It's nothing to do with this.
Okay.
Of course, for someone who's not from Brazil, he or she will probably read shelters and think about bus stop shelters. But it's not a problem for you to add this, and it makes it clear. Okay, another suggestion, here on page 127, when you were talking about the components of the PCA, you mentioned that PCA 3 is mostly represented by population, while PC4 contrasts. This word contrasts is really strange here, but that's not the point. Stops located in the land mix between commercial and age is contained in PC5, which discloses the predominance of the young population in healthy family. But if you go back to the table, you see that the very same variable is also present in PC4. So it's interesting that you mentioned in one dimension, in one.
I think
component,
I used the ones that had the highest values, the highest absolute values. So PC4, you said, right?
Yeah.
Let's see.
0.26 negative.
Yes.
Okay.
And I didn't mention it in the PC5, right? That's what you said. I
You
didn't
mention it in PC5.
And not in PC4.
No.
That's right.
Okay. Regarding the map of figure 3, it's a suggestion. I don't know if it's going to work, but it's a suggestion. You used a lot of dots with the border. And when you show this on the slide, it's okay. I mean, we can clearly see the spots where the concentration of the points are. When I printed it out, the border is making a mess.
Okay.
So I suggest you try removing the border, just leaving the color of the dots, and see if it gets clearer in terms of visualization.
Okay.
Just a suggestion. Because the border is kind of making adding something that's not really needed at this point. What you are interested in is in the concentration, and if you remove the border, it's easy to see the common colors.
Okay.
Okay. And then we go to the complementary research. Again, you have here no predominancy area. This is something, again, I wrote here vague. It's not really vague, it's confusing, which is worse. Some other comments here, but not really relevant. That's it. In general, I think you did an excellent work. And I'm very happy to be a part of this committee because it was an easy task for me to evaluate this. It's good when you see a good piece of research as this one. And that's not really a surprise coming from you and Sira. It was something that I was expecting. But it's always a pleasure to see that that's really the case. So congratulations and thank you for inviting me to be here. And good luck in your professional life.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Nelson. Okay, everyone. I thank you all for your contributions. I'm sure that Samuel will take into consideration all the points and suggestions you've made. I have no questions for you, Samuel. It's a good no questions for you. I'm very proud. You grew a lot considering the entire period of master and PhD. 6 years. 6 years you are working together. I'm so proud of you. I have no question. I wish you the best. You have a great future, a great future. Hope to work with you at the future on some partnership. And it's it. So I have to address Samuel's family in Portuguese because now is the time of the compliment and it's important to the family understand everything. A gente está quase acabando, tá, pessoal? Força aí. Temos um monte de gente aqui, tá, gente? É que não dá para ver na câmera. Acabei de elogiar seu filho, porque ele é maravilhoso como profissional, como pessoa. Foram 6 anos muito tranquilos de trabalhar. A gente sabe, nossa parceria sempre foi muito tranquila. Agora é a hora que ele fica emocionado. Podem chorar, que eu quero ver lágrimas aqui em português. Jaime, I'm sorry, Jaime. You are having a moment, a Portuguese moment here. And eu estou elogiando porque foi uma honra trabalhar com ele. Isso não é uma despedida. Ele sabe que a gente está junto aí para a vida acadêmica. Eu sempre falei para ele que ele tem um perfil acadêmico, embora ele muitas vezes quisesse fugir disso, mas a gente precisa motivar os alunos que a gente sabe que tem um perfil para continuar na academia. Então, assim, Samuel está de parabéns e os pais estão de parabéns, a família está de... É sempre bom ver a família vindo aqui de Goiás, tá, gente? Eles vieram de Goiás. Então, a gente fica muito feliz com a presença de vocês. Agradecer ao Pedro também, que está aqui durante toda a tese. O Pedro é o último aluno que trabalha
mais que 3 horas.
Com análise espacial. Meu último aluno, por enquanto, que está com análise espacial. E eu queria saber se você quer falar alguma coisa. You want to say something in English, after that in Portuguese?
I'd like to thank the professors of the committee. And I was very happy with this committee because each one of the professors participating in the committee was part of my history. Professora Mariana, I knew her from the course I made in the USP of São Paulo, and then I went to an internship in Valencia with Professor Harmy, which received me very well. I'm so happy. Professora Mariana, Professora Renata, that I met on UNPET, and then she was part of my qualification exam. And Professor Antonio Nels, who was the first person I followed to be my supervisor, but he would always say no, I'm retiring, but he never retired. She's she's always retiring. 6 years ago, she started to retire, but never finished it. And my family, I'm so happy for having them here today and always supporting me and rooting for me. This is very important to have this solid background in my home. So this is help to construct who I am today. This is what built me up and turned me into this man you can see today. So I'm very happy for all of you. All I can say is thank you, and I'll be always grateful for this moment. Thank you. Eu posso falar depois lá em casa.
I ask to ask you. I ask you to leave the room. Everyone, ask to ask. Vocês vão precisar sair da sala agora por 5 minutinhos só para a gente deliberar, tá bom? Por favor.
pode me convidar que eu vou também, tá? Assim, você participando da banca, eu
Daqui
compareço.
a um ano eu te Mas outras pessoas podem, não eu. Eu que não posso repetir. Para defesas
Ok,
finais,
sem problema.
tá?
Tá, deixa eu ver.
Okay. Samuel, I'm proud to announce that you are approved for all the members of the jury. Congratulations. Palmas. Congratulations, I'm so happy for you. And right now, should I take pictures, jury? It's possible to
Yep.
take pictures with you? Okay.
Sure.
The family will try.
Cira, eu acho que aqui na sala, vamos tirar uma foto com a banca. Eu e minha família, eu falei que a gente subir lá pro memorial da USP, que eu quero tirar a foto lá. Mas é que eu queria tirar com vocês aqui.
Para eles aparecerem.
Sim, deixa eu fechar a minha câmera. Será que eu já... Acho que eu vou sair da reunião, né? Acho que eu vou sair da reunião, que aí eu saio... que aí...
Pode finalizar.
Não, ainda...
Ele foi aprovado, tudo certo.
Não pode não. A reunião não.
A reunião não. Perfeito. Obrigada, pessoal, se tiver alguém assistindo aí.